The sense of isolation surrounding Meghan Markle and poor Prince Harry is taking a terrible toll on a marriage that began in regal splendour but has dwindled into exiled obscurity. News that the King, on his upcoming state visit to America, has opted not to make time to see his California-based son has only served to amplify the pervasive aura of irrelevance that now defines the increasingly desperate Sussexes. Not a snub, insist Buckingham Palace sources, because Charles's busy itinerary throughout his 3 days in the US simply will not allow a single moment for personal engagements. But definitely a serious snub as far as Harry is concerned, a sure sign in his fevered mind that his carefully crafted plans to heal the royal rift are falling apart at the seams. The needy Duke's overtures to be invited to Britain with his family to see his father have fallen on obstinately deaf ears. And now there's no prospect of a stateside reunion either. Meanwhile, Meghan's downhill slide continues apace amid reports that she's been dropped by her Hollywood agent and, with all else failing, has decided to make mountains of money from motherhood. The difficult Duchess has convinced herself that millions of adoring fans see her as an all-American apple pie mom, and she's determined to cash in on her perfect parent appeal. Good luck with that. The first warning shots in her ladyship's latest incarnation were fired in an extensive Instagram video featuring the famous backs of her kids' heads as they enjoyed Easter in a theatrically cute way just for the cameras. Lilibet in her bunny ears and Archie painstakingly painting eggs in a spinning machine. But if this footage, filmed in the glorious gardens of Montecito Towers, was meant to project an image of innocent joy, it wasn't entirely successful. Egged on by their seasonal fun-loving mum, the weirdly faceless youngsters seemed somehow lonely. Have you ever seen them with other children? Do they have any friends? Let's hope so, because there was something impossibly sad about what looked suspiciously like enforced frolicking. But hey, they'd better get used to it. For, with Meghan intent on milking maternity for the funds she so urgently requires, her two little redheads are destined for central starring roles. As for her other redhead, old Ginger Nuts, that 24/7 moaner with not much hair left, he is reduced to spectator status, watching and wondering what the hell is going on as his wife thrashes around like a dervish in her frantic search for a new source of significant income. Selling mundane domestic products for astronomical prices in her strange online store as ever is clearly never going to earn her the billions she had hoped for. In fact, many believe that this oddball business will not last much longer. And so, it seems, the frenetic Ms. Markle has moved on to her latest lucrative dream. After Meghan the actress, Meghan the Duchess, Meghan the podcaster, and Meghan the Tin Pot tycoon, stand by for Meghan, the mother with money on her mind, which is clearly the reason for the Gruesome Twosome's pretend royal tour of Australia, where she will be posing for selfies as the main attraction at a women-only weekend, paying her $250,000. Meanwhile, he will pick up $50,000 to deliver a speech at an exciting-sounding symposium on psychosocial safety in the workplace, whatever that is. Sadly, the good people of Melbourne are not exactly getting crushed in the rush. After a month, the $1,900 tickets have still not sold out. When he was a frontline royal and a dashing soldier, the popular prince was pure box office. Now, not so much. As a directionless duke just hanging out in Montecito, hapless Harry's pulling power has plummeted. Organisers of the psychosocial safety conflab are currently slashing entry fees in a bid to fill the joint and spare their royal orator the embarrassment of performing to a half-empty auditorium. How the high and mighty fall. The apathy with which most Australians are reacting to the Sussexes' impending arrival is overwhelming. But for some, the feeling is one of antipathy towards a downwardly mobile duo whose last trip down under 8 years ago was steeped in the pomp and ceremony that comes with fully fledged British royalty, an official royal tour. As opposed to a pretend one in the venal pursuit of loads of loot, a tawdry enterprise dismissed by appalled Aussie monarchists as the type of cheap and tacky behaviour we expect of C-list celebrities. But as Meghan careers from career to career and Harry humiliatingly sings for his supper, the question is, are they happy? You decide.
A massive development for Prince Harry. Front page of today's Daily Mirror, royal bombshell, Harry sued. Prince faces defamation battle with his former African charity. For reaction, I'm delighted to welcome broadcaster Paul Cox. Paul, can I get your reaction to this news? How the mighty have fallen. Yeah. A figure within the royal family who was once more popular than Queen Elizabeth, now being sued for libel by the charity he co-founded in the memory of his mother Diana.
Yeah, it has been incredible, hasn't it? And there's one person that seems to be a common denominator in this, and that's his wife, Meghan Markle. But we won't go into that too much right now. What I would say is this charity must really have some beef and some evidence, because taking a royal or an ex-royal to court for libel was no mean feat, an incredibly expensive thing to do. So they must fancy their chances in order to do so. And should they win, I mean, the idea that Prince Harry would have this on his record as well, and the millions and millions of pounds that it would cost him, is kind of unthinkable, really. This is something, unfortunately, is quite inevitable on the path that Harry has taken. He didn't need to do what he's done. He could have even left the royal family. There's lots of questions over that, but he could have done it in a far different way than he has done now. They've gone on this, please don't look at us tour, and they've ended up in an incredible position where now he's being sued. He has no real future. They have to do all sorts of seedy things in order to make money. I really don't know how this ends for him. I think ultimately there are still people in the country that would be interested in Prince Harry coming back to the UK and starting over again. But I think that's the only way out for him now.
I'm loving Please Don't Look at Us tour. That is line of the century. But it's no laughing matter if, as you've said, he's on the hook for millions. If he loses this case, this libel action being brought by Centrebale, the charity he co-founded, if he also loses his legal action against the owners of the Daily Mail newspaper for how they gathered information around stories about Harry 15, 20 years ago, if he loses those cases back to back, he's going to be under serious financial pressure.
Oh, yes, he is. And I'm sure that they're relatively well off. But if you start taking 10, 20 million pounds from someone, you're not that well off anymore. These are as a royal, you've got an income. You're not generating. You're not a business. You've got an income and you're reliant on the firm. Outside of that, you've got to generate all your own money. And now I'm sure that there's some inheritance and some money trickling in, but not to the extent that it would pay for tens of millions of pounds to go out. So he will have to win this or essentially be bankrupt, I would have thought.
Most definitely. I think it's a real concern. And yes, as you've implied, they do have a few $1 million in the bank, but their outgoings are huge. It's my understanding that the mortgage on their Montecito home is in the region of $500,000 a year. Security costs, kids in private school, cost of travel, you name it, staff as well. And let's not forget that their income is subject to the law of diminishing returns. As you implied in your earlier answer, Paul, they're having to sell their wares to the highest bidder. Meghan is charging $2,000 for the great privilege of having lunch in her company, which would, in my personal opinion, create a rather significant amount of acid reflux. Harry was charging $1 million for a speaking engagement. His rate is now $50K, which is great money for you and I, Paul, but not much when you've got a lifestyle like the Prince has.
Yeah, look, it's all relative, isn't it? If you give us 50K, we'd enjoy a very good time. If you give Harry 50K, it's going to pay, like you say, his mortgage for the month. So this
Yeah.
everything's relative, and they're clearly living to the means that they would like, but don't have the ability to earn that sort of money. But we know this because there's no real inherent talent. I'm not being unkind here. If there was, then one of the Netflix shows would have taken off. One of the ridiculous podcasts would have taken off. Some of the products would have taken off. Absolutely everything, particularly that Meghan's touched, has turned to nothing. They've just taken money from the deal and gone on to the next thing because it hasn't worked. So having no discernible talent means that you've got no real way of cashing in. So I don't know what their plan would be. I guess, and I don't know this, I'm not a royal expert, plan Z is to rejoin the royal family, because that's probably the only way out. But I don't know how they do that. I certainly don't know how they do that with Meghan Markle in tow.
Well, I think you've demonstrated a considerable degree of royal expertise because, Paul, I think that is Plan Z, which is to get back into the royal family. Why? Because that's the meal ticket, isn't it? Their value has always been their royal connections. That's why the book Spare was successful, and that's why the Netflix documentary about the couple was successful, because it was all about the royal family. The minute they started doing documentaries about polo or started buying the rights to boring non-fiction books that never saw the light of day, it's been unsuccessful. And we know about the hot mess, the dumpster fire that is Meghan's retail business as ever. So, you know, the bottom line is that they need to be royals again in order to be financially viable. Harry probably needs a few quid from his dad as well. Dad, can you sub me a few million just to keep the lights on? But the million-dollar question is whether that's going to happen. I mean, do you think that as Charles reaches the autumn of his years, that he should reach out to his son? Do you think Charles should welcome Harry back to the fold?
I mean, I don't know if he has or hasn't. It would. My advice would be for him to obviously keep that door open. It would be sad for him not to do so. Both him and William have had difficult lives, having lost their mother in 1997. Of course, this is not news.
Yeah.
But they've both taken very different paths in life. Now, you could argue that William was always going to go on one path and be supported in a different way, and that could be difficult. For someone like Harry, who was an extrovert and had a lot to offer, but probably felt he wasn't getting the attention or the opportunity that he deserved. However, for some reason along the way, he's met one or two people that have just completely misled him, and I think we're seeing at least one of them in those images right now.
I think you're being very tactful about Meghan. You're being far too gentlemanly.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I don't know. You know, and I try not to read everything and believe everything, but come on, there's a common denominator here, and it's not worked out well for him. Now, we've all fallen in love, and we've all sort of been maybe we've had our whole life thrown into disarray in a sense that it's taken us on a different path, or we've changed from the person that we once were. I think people can understand him having a relationship with Meghan Markle. Perhaps people can even understand him wanting to be slightly removed from the royal family because this is tremendous pressure. But at the same time, he could have done this so differently, and the only reason I can think he didn't is because he had Merkel. Sorry, not Merkel. He did not marry Angela Merkel. He married Meghan Markle. He had Markle in his ear, and I don't think that she is in any way helped him.
Yes, indeed. I can't imagine which would be the worst spouse, Angela Merkel, the woman responsible for completely getting rid of Germany's energy independence and facilitating Brexit and doing a load of other things, opening the door to mass immigration, or Meghan Markle, grifter-in-chief, which is lesser of two evils. Briefly, Paul, what we're seeing here with Centre Barley is a quite serious libel action against the Prince, and he's been told off in the past by the Charity Commission, who said that actually he was airing public conflict about Centre Barley, in the newspapers. He shouldn't have done that. So he's already had his collar felt about that and his wrist slapped. So to what extent does his handling of this Centre Barley row represent his general approach to all matters these days?
Yeah, of course. I mean, this is this is testament to that. He's got no boundaries. He's got no guidance. He's not been taught, or if he has been taught, he hasn't listened. Life is difficult for a royal. I'm not saying it's easy, but also at the same time, quite contradicting, it is easy as long as you play the game. Great opportunity was given to Harry. With the Invictus Games, the whole of the Commonwealth was opened up to him. The Queen did absolutely everything she could for the man. In fact, when he ran with that pre-Markle, it was great success. He went to the Caribbean. He won them back over. They were seeking independence from the UK. All of a sudden, he was incredibly popular, and they weren't seeking that anymore. So under the right guidance, I think his life could be a lot easier, but outside, he hasn't got a clue.
Breaking news this morning, front page of the Daily Mirror newspaper, royal bombshell, Harry sued. Prince faces defamation battle with his former African charity. Prince Harry is to be sued in the High Court for libel by Sentebale, the charity that he co-founded in memory of his late mother, Diana. For reaction, we're joined now by Rupert Bell, who is Talk's royal correspondent. Good morning, Rupert.
Good morning, Mark.
Well, this is a royal bombshell. We knew there was froideur between Harry and Sentebale, but we didn't expect this.
Yes, and obviously now, because they feel, and that's Sentebale, that they've defamed the charity and it's basically caused all kinds of problems when they split with the charity. And that is why it has led to a potential court case now being sued. So it's not a good look for Harry. Look, he will obviously be defending that and saying he hasn't done anything wrong. But again, it questions Harry's judgment at time. And it's in the heart of it, it's just sad because I think the intentions of Sentebale were more than honourable, but obviously a huge breakdown in a relationship with the chairman and the board of Sentebale. Harry then leaves, and other members do as well. And as a result, Sentebale feel that they have been impacted by this, by some very negative headlines, which has caused it difficulty for the charity to do its work. I think that's at the heart of it. But obviously, it will be interesting to see whether we end up in court with this. But obviously, it's a serious accusation at Harry and others.
There was a very public war of words, Rupert, wasn't there, between Harry and Dr. Sophie Chandauka, who is the woman that has now gained control of the charity. Some serious beef between her and the Sussexes that goes back many years.
Yes, and actually we saw some sort of manifestation of that at a polo event. Sophie wanted to take the charity in a different direction. She actually mentioned that Harry had an impact with all his negativity around his departure from the royal family and other members of the royal family was causing the charity difficulties in turning into getting donors. So there's a lot at stake here and a lot of, as I say, accusations from both sides. So it will be, but obviously now that they've actually thrown down this lawsuit on Harry and others, it will be interesting to see how it plays out. But you clearly can see that there is a major breakdown of trust between all sides, and it developed over years and the recent months as well.
And this has been a public relations hot mess for Harry for quite a long time, hasn't it? Because the Charity Commission investigated this row and criticised Harry for making his disagreements with Sentebale and its leadership public. And of course, he lost control of the charity, which I think was hugely embarrassing as well. And now a court case, and this is going to be unedifying, isn't it? Harry's already suing the owners of the Daily Mail, a case that he could potentially lose, which will cost him millions. And if he loses this one as well, I mean, this is the nightmare scenario for the prince, isn't it?
Yes, and look, he quite, obviously when you've read Spare and others, he plays the victim card. At the moment, well, Sentebale say they're the victim of the way they treated him, the Sentebale charity. So it will be very interesting, the defence from Harry's point of view. So there will be lots of eyeballs on it, sort of unattractive from his point of view as he tries to, look, he's about to go to Australia and he's trying to create a new life for himself. But these endless negative, lurid headlines won't be doing his cause any good. And obviously, there will be what was the impact of the Duchess of Sussex on this, on the charity? Because there's a sense that she didn't like what was going on there and taking the spotlight, wanted to be in the spotlight, which added to the problems and the breakdown of communication as well. So it's going to be, it's actually quite an interesting one, I'm sure. I don't know how long it'll be before it ends up in court, but the fact is that this has happened. It's not a good look for Harry.
No, it's a public relations disaster. It could be a financial headache as well. It's a legal problem, Rupert. And then, of course, it's emotional and emotive, because this is a charity that Harry co-founded in memory of his late mother, Diana.
Well, that's the whole point. There's the intention of the charity was hugely honourable and was successful to begin with, but then it turned, and and they felt, the charity, they didn't want to be doing these sort of polo events and sort of centred in America, because that was not the sort of ethos of the charity, and wanted to make it more African based. And you actually understand that, rather than having a few sort of polo events where Harry and Meghan sort of glad hands and sort of shake a few hands and disappear again, and wanted a much more hands-on approach. So I think at the heart of it, it's going to be very hard for Centre Bali at the moment. Would you be wanting to donate? And this is going to be hard for them to rebuild their position. And this is obviously one way they feel that they can restore honour, because they feel that they have been mistreated.
You could argue that Harry's got previous on this, Rupert, because there aren't just concerns about the governance of Centre Bali. With early on in the charity's history, the person running Centre Bali on a large six-figure salary, with the kids, that person's children's private education being paid for by the charity, new 4x4 cars, accommodation, flights, all the rest of it. So the question mark there. Similarly, problems around the governance of African Parks, another charity to which Harry has lended his name and his support. And then there's Invictus, which is not without controversy either. So Harry doesn't appear to have the Midas touch within this philanthropic field, does he?
Not at the moment. I think that's an understatement. And yet he wants to do that. And this is the whole point, because we know that maybe he thinks he's in a sense of entitlement, and he can just turn up and everything in the garden will be rosy. Well, Invictus Games, that is something that he's passionate about. He's sometimes perceived as he was the one who founded it. It was founded along with the king and his brother. He's obviously taken sort of a premier role in it. So, but an Archwell Foundation, again, hasn't had always the perfect press as well. So, from his charities endeavours, there does always seem to be a few problems along the way. And he needs to rebuild trust with people, that actually what he's getting involved with has a sense of purpose, rather than just, as it would appear, turning up and saying giving a few speeches and moving on again. Well, look, they're obviously about to go to Australia, but that seems to have also been fraught with sort of a PR difficulty. So it's not easy for Harry to get on the front foot. But you might be saying that it might be all his own doing.
To what extent could the influence of his wife, Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, be having on this issue with Centre Bali? To what extent do you detect the hand of Meghan here when it comes to this row with the charity?
I think a lot of the time you feel the hand of Meghan is over everything. It's all about her. Yet she should be leaving him to his own devices, getting on, ploughing his own furrow. Look, where's he going to be earning money? Look, they made the Netflix documentary, Spare, but everything else hasn't exactly produced a sort of commercial and financial windfall that he's been involved in. So you can feel that the hand of Meghan is hanging around in the back. And look, and she's got her own issues, trying to develop her as ever products and everything. So they're suffering at the moment from a lot of negative PR, but at times you feel it's of their own doing.
Indeed. And when it comes to this court case with Centre Bali, let's not forget the background that Dr. Sophie Chandauka said she was the victim of misogynoir, which is an awful form of sexism and racism rolled into one. And she laid that claim at Harry's door. Harry was not found to be guilty of that when the Charity Commission looked into it, although it still stinks, doesn't it? You know, these allegations are serious. What do you think King Charles and Prince William make of headlines like this, that Harry's going to be sued for libel?
Now, here we go again, I think, and frustration, because it's yet more negative headlines. You know, it's bad enough with what, you know, the pair have to dealing with the fallout from the Epstein case and everything there around Andrew. So that's bad news. And Harry does seem to be another one who's causing negativity around what the royal family are trying to do. And we're coming up to a celebration of 100 years since the birth of the late Queen. You know, they want to be telling some good stories about what the royal family have done, and particularly in terms of the King's case, his late mother, and the impact she had. And so that's coming up in the next few weeks. Yeah, well, a couple of weeks when they'll be celebrating that. So from them, it's here we go again. How do we find a way of getting onto the PR front foot? Because once again, the stories are dominated by the errant two, you know, Andrew and Prince Harry.
Royal bombshell. Harry sued. Prince faces defamation battle with his former African charity. For reaction, I'm delighted to welcome someone that knows Harry intimately well, his former biographer, Angela Levin. Good morning, Angela.
Good morning.
We didn't see this coming, did we? This is a guy that's being sued for libel by the charity that he set up in memory of his late mother, Diana.
Yes, I have to say straight away, which you probably don't want to hear, it's that a mountain out of a molehill. We don't know what it is all about. It's not said exactly what's wrong. It seems very odd that you're attacking someone because you think they've been rude to you. In this sort of era that we live in, we're not like that. I mean, anybody who's sort of working in their job and someone then gives them a real telling off, actually you are not going to take them to court unless it's really shocking. They had an examination partly soon afterwards, and they said there was no wrongdoing there. But she is this doctor who's taken, not doctor.
Yeah, she is
lawyer.
actually. Yeah, doctor. Yeah, but her name is Dr. Sophie Chandauka. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, she has got very, very angry about his behaviour, which is something entirely different. I think that's quite right. What is very upsetting for anyone is that a lot of money is going to be spent on this in the courts rather than giving to the charity.
Most definitely. Why do you think Sentebale have taken this legal action, Angela?
Well, I think she was furious how they treated her. Harry is very rude nowadays. He was very rude to her, and she wasn't going to stand for it. And so he was making her life not very pleasant. But, you know, we've all had that, haven't we? To take it to court is very strange. There's nothing there that's proper, if you see what I mean. And one of the things, I'm not saying I'm against her, but one of the things Dr. Chandauka did, it was 400,000 with the charity in 2024, and then almost another million after that for what she'd actually spent. So she's had loads and loads of people coming around giving advice. But it's actually that Harry and his colleague and his partner who set it up are very angry that she's wasting money. And that was one of the key things. But Harry wasn't nice to her. When Meghan met her, she was not nice to her either. But there's a slightly different from actually going to court on it.
I appreciate your nuanced response to this story, Angela. There were stories going back several years that Meghan sought to upstage Dr. Sophie Chandauka. Is there any credibility to those allegations?
Well, what the thing was that there was a polo game to try and get money for the charity. And we didn't know that Dr. Chandraduka was actually there, but Meghan did. And Meghan didn't want her in the right place, which is Meghan's middle of everything. She wants to be there.
Oh, this was on the podium for the photo call that allegedly poor old Sophie Chandraduka was shifted to one side. It's like, get out of the way. Meghan's got to be in the middle.
Exactly. And she had to bend down because they had the big award there, which Meghan wanted to hold. Now, that is all disgusting, but I don't know whether you should use money that is going for children who have had AIDS and are very unwell. And I'm not sure that that should be given to them rather than actually what's going through to get annoyed with Harry.
Angela, whatever way you look at it, it's more bad headlines for the Duke of Sussex, isn't it? This is a guy that's currently suing the owners of the Daily Mail. If he were to lose both court cases, it would be a disaster.
Yes, he probably will, actually, but I don't know. Certainly not the second one. But I don't feel sorry for him about it. I feel sorry for the charity. And I think that that's the thing I'm concerned about. But he's Mr. We don't like you anymore. He's too big for his boots, which he now no longer uses. He's actually going to Australia and he's going to try and do this phony trip again, which we all get very, very angry about because they don't deserve it. And there's all sorts of funny now about who's paying the money. They have said that in Australia they weren't going to pay anything for them for travel. Now they are.
Yeah.
And this was the other way around, that they said they were and now they're not. You know, I think it's all a terrible mess. And I think it's a shocking thing. Harry should have behaved much better, but he's frightened. He has to do what Meghan tells him. And he should not be trampling over the royal family all the time.
What do you think that Charles and William will make of this headline in the newspaper today? Royal bombshell, Harry sued. Even if he is successful in defending himself against the allegation of libel, it's still not great for Charles and William to be seeing this about the prodigal prince.
No, well, the more and more he behaves badly, the more they want to get rid of him, and he's not have anything to do with the royal. And I get freezing cold if I think that the king is going to take him back. I think it would be a complete disaster. William will, of course, want him out, but we can't have this. I mean, he's ruining the royal family. He's ruining the behaviour of the royal family, and he doesn't seem to care. And he can allow these things to happen where he's going to be taken to court, and he will, it just goes on and on and on, that this is the man who's just going to court and telling people off, and then they tell him off, and it's not good behaviour. And that's partly because he doesn't know what to do, partly because he wants to please his wife, because she wants him to show more power, which is nonsense. And I can't say what I feel really most of all is that they must not have anything to do with the royal family anymore.
I mean, at the moment, Harry mired in these expensive court cases, Angela. Then you've got, as you mentioned, the fake royal trip to Australia, which many Australians are resisting. They don't want the Duke and Duchess of double standards turning up on their shores. Harry is having trouble, apparently, selling tickets to his mental health speech. They've slashed the prices for that. Meghan's trying to charge people $2,000 for the great privilege of having lunch in her company. It doesn't bode well for the rest of the year, does it?
No, it doesn't. It's absolutely terrible. And I don't know why that the royal family here don't try and say to the people that he's going to fine, please don't do it. This is affecting our palace and everything that's going on for us. Please don't do it. They won't, of course. They stay quiet and back. But I think sometimes they ought to start saying things about this, or actually letting the public know, because, it's very wrong. behaviour, completely and utterly wrong behaviour. And it seems that he doesn't know what else to do. Nobody knows what to do with him, and they're a bit scared of Meghan because she's so determined. She would go on and on and on and on to have a hugely expensive hotel, you know, and the way she pushes people around. I saw it taking a mic from somebody who was a woman who was talking, and she was pulling it and pulling it, and this very nice woman was talking about it, and she got really angry because she wasn't talking just herself. I mean, they are worse and worse.
A fresh nightmare for Prince Harry as he is sued by the charity that he co-founded in the memory of his mother, Diana. Duncan Barks, your reaction?
Oh, it's just an increasing embarrassment, isn't it, really? I mean, I don't know. I keep hearing reports that literally every month there's a change of advisors for Harry and Meghan. They surround themselves with people who they say, we need your expertise in improving our image and profile and stuff. Then clearly these people try and do that, and they don't like what they hear. This is Harry and Meghan, and they tend to boot them out. And anyone, I mean, look, I'll give you some free advice. Just stop talking. Just stop talking, Harry. Stop. Just stop it. You know, you're taking people to court in this country. There's a good chance you're going to lose both those cases, right? And it's just like, have you got any idea what that makes you look like? Then the impact it still has on our royal family, which has already had its troubles with Andrew, you know, the black sheep. Just stop it.
Most definitely. I think it's a real headache for him. And I was just looking at the news wires yesterday. And are you familiar with Victoria Arbiter? Because she is the daughter of Dickie Arbiter.
Ah, yes, the former royal press secretary.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I found a very, very interesting line from her on this latest case. Okay, so this is Centre Barley, which is the AIDS charity set up by Harry in memory of his mother. And Arbiter has said the following, and I think I want to bring you the exact quote because I think it's a real headache for Harry. Let's just get it up here because this is live telly and breaking news. So here we go. Oh my goodness gracious me, live radio. Essentially, the flavour of what she said is that actually this appears to have legs as a case because Centre Barley have independent funding. So this court case, this libel action against Harry is not being funded through charitable donations. There is a benefactor that is paying for this. Also, the board of United is not just Dr. Sophie Chandauka, who had that public row with Harry. The board are on board with this one, no pun intended. And they have a case because they wouldn't want to go into this risking losing.
Exactly.
So it's a problem.
It's a massive problem. And you've got to try and just pare it back a little bit and strip it back and try and, well, I try and understand what is his motivation here. I still maintain he's a very angry young man for all kinds of reasons. You know, he lost his mum at a very early age, which you never recover from, despite what people say. So that's permanently there. That's not changing. But I also think he's got this influence of Meghan. You can almost, it seems to me that it's almost like, Harry, you got to show them who's boss. Harry, you got to show them who the top man is, right? All of that going on. And I think that she is driving this. And ultimately, I think some people in this country kind of still have a soft spot for Harry, but increasingly their patience is wafer, paper thin. And it's just relentless. And you literally, if he was here now, right, I'd go, mate, pub, midday, a few pints of Guinness.
Correct.
We'll have a kebab. We need to have a chat about stuff. Because it's almost like you need someone to put his arm around them and just go, fella, right? You need to kind of step back a little bit and be told how it looks.
And I think break the Meghan spell.
Yeah.
The problem you've got, I believe that it's a cult-like scenario whereby she's captured Harry.
Yeah.
What's she done? She's taken him away from his country of birth, away from his family, away from his friends.
Yeah.
He's stuck there in that mansion in California.
Yeah.
He's living in a bubble.
So he's got his kids, right? Won't want to lose his children, as any man wouldn't. So that keeps him there as well. And he is, I believe, utterly isolated. And you could almost say there's an element of brainwashing going on here, because if you actually just go through what you've outlined, he has been removed. That is how cults behave. If you look at cults around the world, they remove people from the bosom of their family, their friends, they isolate them, then that person is only subjected to one viewpoint continually, pressure, roll into that the affection that he has for his children. That's going to keep him there. He won't want to lose that. I mean, it's an awful situation to be in.
And Tom Bower, who knows his onions, of course, just written another book about the Sussexes, has argued in his book that Meghan wasn't just the driving force behind Megxit, but that she used the idea of victimhood to convince Harry that he needed to leave the UK, that he was being treated so badly. Well, cry me a river, because this is a guy that grew up in mansions, castles, and palaces.
Let's say the unsayable, shall we? You know, what's tragic, what happened to Diana, she was no saint when it came to media manipulation.
100%.
All right, you know, I know photojournalists and picture editors of the past, you know, the idea that she was somehow snapped walking from her car to go to the gym or whatever purely by accident was absolute guff. She tipped off photographers to say, I'm going to be here, all right, you want the pictures? Right, you need to be here 6:50 in the morning at this gym in Chelsea because you can get your snaps. Right, all of that was going on. So
I do the same, by the way. I just let the Daily Mail know that I'd be at Greg's the Baker's at 11 a.m. this morning.
I've seen pictures of you putting your bins out as well.
Yeah.
So obviously you tip them off when you're taking out your recycling.
In my dressing gown.
In your dressing gown.
With
and
my
those
very
awful flip-flops you wear.
Correct.
Right.
And the dressing gown is just, can I just say, loosely tied.
On purpose. So, you know, let's not pretend that Diana was, you know, this saint, because she played the game as much as anyone else.
Most
but
definitely.
ultimately, you strip it down, he lost his mum in horrific circumstances at a very young age, and ultimately that makes him vulnerable. And I do believe that Meghan is playing on that vulnerability.
I have found the Victoria Albert post on X, and it reads as follows, Duncan, and I think it makes for chilling reading for Harry. Lawyers, this is in relation to Sentebale suing Harry, lawyers generally try to dissuade and discourage clients from filing lawsuits due to the eye-watering costs, the high stakes and the risks involved. A decision to move ahead suggests there is financial support and, wait for it, significant evidence.
Yeah.
Harry's in trouble. I mean, if he loses this, and like you said, he's also suing the owners of the Daily Mail at the moment.
Yep.
If he loses that, first of all, he'll be on the hook for millions.
Yep.
And yes, he's working alongside Elton John in his case against the Daily Mail. Well, Elton John
can afford
is close to being a US dollar billionaire.
Yeah.
This is small change.
Yeah.
It's not small change for Harry.
Yeah. And what happens, so if he does lose, and you say he's on the hook for, you know, potentially millions of dollars, etc., if he loses both those cases, where's he going to get the money from? Because the income streams are pretty much exhausted now, aren't they? Because, you know, the TV programmes haven't really worked.
No.
You know, he's knocked out the book. Well, that's the book. The book's done. What is left in order to get some cash in?
Well, I'm trying to work out Harry's income at the moment, and he was commanding upwards of $1 million for a speaking fee when he left the royal family. His current rate is 50k. Now, that's money that you and I could only dream of. But for Harry, that doesn't touch the sides. Once you've paid your management and your public relations people and your accommodation and transport and your tax.
Well, let's put it into context. You mentioned Elton
mortgage
John.
for a month.
You know, you can get Elton John to play at your party if you wanted to, right? Elton John would still do a private gig for you. It's going to cost you a couple of £1 million.
Correct.
Right? Harry, you can get him for 50 grand for a speaking engagement. So, you know, if they lose these court cases, Elton will just go, oh, I'll just write the check, you know.
It's a couple of corporate gigs and he's done.
Harry, it's just like, what am I going to do now?
Most definitely. How do you think this court case is going to affect his relationship with his father? Because the king doesn't want to see his son in the dock, does he?
No, and I mentioned earlier, the reputation of the royal family has taken a battering because of Andrew. Charles will be of the position rightly, which is Harry, just leave it. Just leave it. The best thing you can do in order to repair your own reputation and the relationship between me and you is to just pipe down and be quiet. And that's when the healing might start to happen. But I don't think he's capable.
It's very sad, isn't it? And very briefly, what's your appraisal of the Sussexes' marriage? Do you think that notwithstanding their financial and career problems, they're still in love?
Wow. I'd like to think they are, but I would suggest that the current behaviour suggests that it's functional.
Wow. What a devastating line. That was a straight answer to a straight question. Is the publishing sensation of the year. The book is quite simply called Elizabeth II, In Private, in Public, The Inside Story. Its author is the Daily Mail journalist Robert Hardman, and he joins me now. Hello, Robert.
Good morning, Mark.
Congratulations on the release of the book. It's made many headlines. We are well aware of Queen Elizabeth, the monarch. What can you tell us about Elizabeth, the human being?
Well, as I hope I explain in the book, you had private queen and public queen, and both were remarkable and very effective. But I think people tend still to have this idea of the late queen as very dutiful. We know she was very attentive to duty, quite serious, quite reserved. I don't think the drama series The Crown did her any favors. It made her look quite a downbeat person who was sort of constantly being buffeted by events, with little sense of her own agency. And actually, she was a very shrewd stateswoman. She could be very sharp. She could be very funny. But I think what was so remarkable was that her authority was completely undiminished to the day she died. There was never any talk of, oh, it's time she really ought to step down, she ought to stand aside. She was the queen to her dying day. And as I explain in the book, she was still actually at work on her deathbed when they opened up her last red box, which was in her bedroom on the day she died. There in it was the list of citations for the Order of Merit. She'd been busy making nominations. I mean, she was extraordinary, and we all miss her. But I think what she did was she enabled this country to sort of punch above its weight often at times when we were either in the international doghouse or we were an international joke, as we were in, say, the mid to late 70s. She was what made Britain proud. And people still want to talk about it. People said to me when I embarked on this book, they said, there can't be anything new to say. I mean, come on, everything's been written. And that's simply not true. Because A, there's always new papers and what have you coming out. But B, people who may not have spoken about it before want to talk about it, which is one of the reasons why one of the people I interviewed for my book was Donald Trump.
You interviewed the President of the United States about Elizabeth.
Yeah, 3.5 months ago, at rather short notice, I was told, get to Trump International Golf Club in Florida. He'll see you. Well, it didn't start too well, because when I got there, he professed to not know anything about an interview, and he was quite shocked I didn't play golf. But after that, when I said we wanted to talk about, I'm just here to hear your reflections on Elizabeth II, Mr. President. He went, do you want something to eat? So we sat down for breakfast, and then had several conversations over the course of the weekend, including over dinner as well. And I was only there because he adored the Queen. He just thought she was extraordinary, and he loves the monarchy. I mean, he's a huge fan of the King as well, which I think is one of the reasons why I know people are very worried about the state visit in a couple of weeks. But actually, I think it's going to go fine, because he is a huge royalist.
And what was Donald Trump's appraisal of the Queen's qualities?
Well, the word he used more than any other was she was unbelievable. He just said she was unbelievable. He kept saying it again and again. But he was quite funny. He said on his first meeting with her, he said, the first thing he asked her in a very sort of Trumpian way was, he said, I wanted to ask her who was her favorite president. And I kept saying, come on, who was it? Was it Reagan? Was it Eisenhower? And he said all she said was, well, they were all very nice. And he kept trying on that tack. And then he tried, say, switch tack. And he tried, he said, so I started asking about who was her favorite prime minister. And it was the same thing, they were all very nice. And he said, actually, he realized that was sort of one of the secrets for her, enduring power, influence, position, whatever, was that, she handled that sort of thing very well. He said, most of us would have just sort of said something and at it would have popped, but she didn't. And he was very struck by they got on. I mean, there was a real rapport there. Their first meeting was meant to last 15 minutes, and it ended up lasting for nearly an hour. Because the thing they have in common, particularly, is a great love of Scotland. Trump's mother was a MacLeod from the Isle of Lewis, and the Queen, of course, had a Scottish mother, and both of them owned fairly substantial bits of Scotland. So that was something in common. But he came again the next year on a state visit. And then he came, of course, last year on his state visit to the King. And actually, if you look back through the speech he made last year at the state banquet, I mean, it's quite a remarkable eulogy of all things British. I mean, it might seem a bit odd given some of the things he's been saying lately. You know, these sort of random outbursts against the British government or the British armed forces or whatever. But deep down, he is viscerally an Anglophile. He feels a deep connection, and that, as I say, I think that's why whatever else may go on, if the world hasn't exploded by then, I think the state visit will still be okay.
Well, indeed, and I think Elizabeth deserves credit for the strength of the special relationship with the United States. She has been central to that for decades, and worth reminding ourselves. I'll let you fact check me if required, Robert, but I think the Queen was just 25 years of age when she acceded to the throne, and her first Prime Minister was Winston Churchill, no less.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, she really knew every significant and substantial figure from the end of the Second World War to the present day. Winston Churchill, obviously wonderful. I mean, you know, she I love those movie tone newsreels. She did know everybody, and Churchill was her first. Liz Truss was her last. She'd appointed Liz Truss.
Go out with a bang.
But that's just her British prime ministers. What people often forget, of course, she was queen at the time of her death of 15 nations, and they all had their prime ministers too. I mean, I once tried to tot up the number of prime ministers she'd had in all her realms, and it was almost impossible because I'd sort of come to what I thought was the final figure, and then there was an election in the Solomon Islands the next day, so there was yet another one. So you could never really be entirely sure, but it was certainly well over 200 prime ministers around the world.
She's a 25-year-old young woman. Did she struggle to settle in the role?
Well, what I explain in the book is it was a genuine shock. I mean, everyone knew the King was ill in 1952, but as she told one of my interviewees, she thought he had at least another year to go. And suddenly this happened. He died in the middle of the night at Sandringham while she was in the branches of a giant fig tree in Aberdare National Park in Kenya at a place called Treetops. And people were, I mean, the world was in shock. She was one of the last to know. But what was interesting in those days was there was no rush. She was 25. She was a mother of two. But there was a sort of sense of, well, we must let her sort of find her feet. So she didn't actually broadcast, for example. No one heard her voice as Queen for 10 months till her Christmas broadcast in 1952. Court mourning, which was when the royal household sort of shuts down at a time of death, that lasted for 3 months. Whereas if you compare it to the accession of Charles III, I mean, he was on the airwaves within 24 hours. Court mourning lasted just 1 week. So there was just different expectations. But the first few years of her reign were very exciting for Britain. It was a sort of era of rejuvenation. We were still on rations. We'd just come out of the war. We were nearly bankrupt. And people genuinely felt that this new young Queen marked a sort of a new era. And you know, that's something, clearly that's not how people felt when with the accession of the new king. I mean, you know, there wasn't a sense of Britain is about to sort of be reborn as a sort of great world power. But that's how they did feel in the 50s. And that sort of golden era, there was a sort of honeymoon period which lasted for 4 years. And then in 1956, we had the Suez crisis when Britain, France and Israel hatched a madcap plot to try and reclaim the Suez Canal that went very badly wrong. And we ended up in the sort of international pariah status with America being very, very critical, America threatening to devalue the pound. And that was a turning point. Britain at that point was in a very bad place. And what did we do to sort it out? We sent the Queen on a state visit to Washington to win over American hearts and minds, and it was a great success. So, you know, there are echoes. She spent a lot of her life making up for political blunders, shall we say.
Well, I know. I mean, this woman, you know, the flavour of your book, by the way, it's a cracking read. It's such a page-turner, and we'll never scratch the surface of what's in the book, so you need to get your hands on the copy. Some of the headlines are absolutely huge. She came close to a nervous breakdown in 1969. It's a very, very moving passage in the book there. Very interesting that she wanted her great-grandchildren at Balmoral before she died. If we go rapid fire with the few minutes that we have left, Robert, this was a woman of diplomatic genius, of charm, of intelligence, of statecraft. You suggest in the book that perhaps her protection of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and those allegations that faced him might have been a rare misstep.
Yeah, I mean, there weren't many mistakes in her reign, but she's not infallible, and she did. In the 70-year reign, there were mistakes, and one of them was not to rein in Prince Andrew when he was clearly heading into sort of difficult waters. I mean, before, you know, the whole Epstein saga blew up, he was a pretty rickety trade envoy. She had tried very hard her staff had been leaning on the Royal Navy to try and keep finding a role for Andrew in the Navy. And that failed. So in 2001, it was the Blair government, actually nudged by a certain Peter Mandelson, who got him this role as a trade envoy. And he was basically left to sort of just go off and hang out with all sorts of unsavory characters. And that was a mistake, no question. But I think when historians come to look back on the totality of her 70-year reign, you know, Andrew will be one of the things that she got wrong. And by the way, she wasn't the only person who indulged Andrew.
Of course.
I mean, I think there was a problem there was a problem in that people didn't like to tackle Andrew because they thought that somehow they might be upsetting the Queen. But as I discovered, I mean, she knew all his faults. He was not her favourite. He was the one she worried about a lot because she knew that he was trouble.
Interesting to bust that myth. And just a few seconds to go, Robert, I need to ask you about the Sussexes. What would the Queen make of what's happening at the moment? They're off on one of those faux royal trips to Australia.
Yes.
Harry's suing the owners of the Daily Mail, your paper, and now he's being sued by his own charity, Centre Barley. What would the great Queen think of all of that?
I think she would just think the whole thing was very sad and utterly needless. And if they just, you know, calmed down in January 2020, instead of going off in a huff and blowing up a very carefully arranged royal, she'd worked really hard to give them a decent go at being royal, and they tore it up. They didn't give it time. She would have just thought they were impatient and silly.